Then Johnson Dare, London Dai, Shamla Savan, Omen Georgie and G. Podran, Distance on Jin Kunji Noni, Ronson, Choker Nonson, Tonzebe, Sawela Meshala Soade. So let's begin with bodhicitta, which is the thought that in order to benefit all sentient beings, whose numbers fill the extent of space, we will listen to, contemplate, and put into practice the profound Dharma in order to reach the level of Vajradhara, of full Buddhahood, and bring all beings to that same state. So to whatever degree you can connect with that conceptually as an orientation of the heart, an altruistic mind that is universal and that goes beyond reference points of time and space and wishes not just for temporary benefit but for ultimate fruition of all beings. See how that's like. What is that like to direct your intention in that way? And then let's just come back to our body. Let's put a hand on our belly, one on our chest, and feel this sense of contact, sense of being held. And as you breathe, receive. Breathing in, receiving care, receiving attention from yourself to yourself. And as you breathe out, a sense of acceptance, allowing, offering space. And just paying attention to what you're feeling and holding with care, without judgment or agenda. Connecting with a basic sense of goodness, of sufficiency, even though we may feel edgy or incomplete or sunken, withdrawn. Notice just right in the middle of this act of paying attention with care, there's a basic sense of goodness. And let your hands rest. Feel that space of vulnerability in the front of the body where the hands were touching. And open now with an altruistic wish. Staying attentive to what you're feeling, not pushing it down or running away. Right in the midst of attuning to yourself, wishing the benefit of others. Expanding that altruistic wish impartially. Imagining that it is a universal wish, all beings, all life. Now, in the future, in the past, to the extent of space, on and on. And then stepping into bodhicitta itself, that altruistic universal wish, now becoming the wish for the awakening of all beings, the unfolding of their full potential, wisdom and compassion. And this wish includes oneself. And finally letting it go and just resting in simplicity, in the always, already. The great purity and equality. All space and time. And just look at that mind that knows, that is aware. And if even just for a brief instant, touching the ground. Clarity and emptiness. Vividness in space. Okay, so let's now get into the body a little bit. Let's just start with a progressive, complete breathing practice. Our hands on our hips, breathing with the belly. Bring the breath all the way down into the belly, and then squeezing it out. What we're going to do is flush the winds out of the body. Breathing in and out, and really emphasizing the out breath, squeezing out the breath. And the hands can give you an indication of what it's like to bring the breath down into the belly. And notice that point at the end of the out breath where the belly kind of deflates all the way down, kind of below the navel, downward, inward. Draw it back. A few more of those. Bring your hands up to the level of the chest, thumbs in the armpits, elbows out straight. Breathe in with the belly, and then bring the breath upward and outward all the way to the sides of the chest. And exhale downward and inward all the way down to that point in the belly. And squeeze it out. Inhale from the bottom up, filling all the way up, really exploring the full capacity. Out. A few more breaths like this. Fully exhaling, expelling all of the stale winds of the body, totally flushing it out. And then last stage, thumbs in the clavicles, raising the elbows up, breathing into the belly, adding the chest, inviting the breath all the way up to the top, and exhaling all the way back down. Feeling the position of the elbows, how that invites the breath up into the very tops of the chest. A few more. And the next exhalation, let your hands float down. Breathe naturally with the belly. feel the kind of sensation of the body. Any tingling, any flow of energy, any sense of spaciousness, and also any sense of stuckness, sharpness. Okay, so we're going to do some self-massages. We'll start from the top down. So begin just by rubbing the body, just creating friction on the top, over the face, and then we go down over the arm, back to the inside of the arm, down the other arm, back up the inside, down sides of the chest, in front and back as you can. And then down the outside and top of the leg, around the foot, up the inside, and then the other leg. Really get your arms into it, really brisk movements. And then when you're finished, just again resting, feeling the body as a whole, activated, energized. Feel the breath flowing through, mixing with that activation. Breath by breath, mixing more and more with the body as a whole. Can you flash on the body as a whole, feeling it all at once? Okay, next one, just massaging, getting a little bit deeper into the tissues. Same progression. And again, whenever you're done resting, full body, feeling the tingling, whatever activation. And as you breathe, imagine that the whole body is breathing. Every pore, as you breathe in, mixing the breath. And exhaling, softening. As if the whole body is a membrane, diaphanous, permeable. Relaxing with the out-breath, softening. And now with fists, just kind of knocking, vibrating the body into the bones. Make sure you get the back of the neck, the head there. Same progression. Be able to feel more of the body as a whole. And start to feel around you, the space around you, behind, to the sides, so that as you breathe in, you feel the body all around. As you breathe out, you soften the boundary all around. Last movement with open hands, just palms, slapping, activating. So as much as we're able, wanting to contact a sense of full body presence. It is active, alive, and yet relaxed and spacious. It is in exchange with the environment, but the boundary is soft. A sense of feeling the space around you. So we're going to lie down, and if you have a mask, or if you're able to create darkness, do that now. And when we lie down, having a posture where our knees are bent and our feet are a little bit further apart than our hips, so our knees fall together. And then letting the hands rest on the belly, so the thumbs are at the navel, and the hands are kind of framing a triangle below the belly. And in these initial moments, just feeling the release, the instinctual release of the body, allowing it to settle, as if falling back into a very plush comforter, mattress, bed. We're going to be working with that backward, downward, instinctual release. So as you breathe now, try to feel how the body is in contact with the ground. Feeling the soles of the feet, the sacrum, and hips, the middle of the back, the elbows, shoulder blades, and the back of the head. These points of contact being able to feel them and breathe across them. And as you breathe in, you sense that contact, and as if you were inviting the breath from the ground into the body. And as you exhale, flowing down through those points into the ground. So we'll start just globally, breathing and feeling in whatever way seems right. The key here is to catch the release. And as you breathe in, you search out solidity, fixation, or numbness, soreness, grasping. As you breathe out, you allow that to rest on the ground. You allow it space to unfold, to shed, to soften. And breath by breath to flow and release backward and downward. So this principle is something that we would work with in every practice. The clear feeling and the spacious release. Let's just briefly move through these points to get a sense of each of them. Breathing in with the feet. And invite the breath up through the feet in the ankles, the shins, and breath by breath, inviting it all the way up into the knees. And letting the exhalation carry tension flowing downward. Offering it, releasing it into the ground below. And it takes some degree of practice to familiarize. Once you have the sense of this in-breath, mixing, feeling, out-breath, releasing, flowing. There is a revealing. The in-breath illuminates and reveals. The out-breath empties and reveals, unveils, discloses. Let's move to the sacrum, breathing in, feeling that place, breathing in from the ground, breathing across that boundary. Breath by breath, to the hips, to the thighs, and up to the knees. The point here is to develop an inner eye, a way of knowing the inner dimension of the body. We do this very gradually and gently. So breathing across the sacrum and the hips, emptying, flowing down as you breathe out. Now breathing in at the mid-back, the center of the chest. And releasing. Inviting the breath through that place of contact along the spine in the middle of the back, from the ground on through, and the breath flowing into the chest and outflowing, washing back down, carrying with it solidity and tension, leaving behind a vivid space. Let's move to the shoulders, shoulder blades. And breathing up into the throat, releasing from that place down through the shoulders, shoulder blades down to the ground. Adding the elbows. What does it like to invite the breath through the shoulders from the ground, to allow it to pool in the throat, across the clavicles, and on the out breath to flow, to wash, to release backward and downward. And finally, let's move to the head, the back of the head, breathing in, feeling that place of contact. It may not even be perceptible, but as you breathe in, mixing with the rigidity, any solidity, the frozenness in our brainstem, the top of our spine, base of our skull. As you breathe in, inviting the life-giving, nurturing breath of the ground, mixing and releasing. Let the whole back of the head participate in this exchange. Breathing in, exploring also the jaw, the temples, the forehead. These places of holding tension. Also the crown. And see what it's like to take your hands now and to just gently massage, that place just below the back of the skull, where the skull meets the spine into that notch. And just massaging that region and also the sides, the two balls at the base of the skull. Really getting in there, massaging that. Massaging the jaw, up into the temples, and if you can, massaging the forehead, just rubbing it a little bit. Anywhere else in the head. And then again, just let your hands relax, feeling the activation in the head, and again, breathing in from the ground. Now exploring the space. Maybe there is a shift. Maybe there's more feedback, sensation to mix the in-breath with, and to offer back, to flow back down into the ground. With your eyes wide, look into the middle of that space, the middle of the head space. Look back, as it were. Look through. Continue to breathe and allow the whole back of the head to just dissolve backward and downward with each out-breath. And look into that space. Looking through the emptiness in the center of the head. Falling backward into openness. Now bring your hands to the center of your chest at the level of your heart, and breathe now, coming back down to the mid-back region, breathing in from the ground up and meeting the hands. Breathing out, releasing and relaxing backward and downward. Breathe with the heart space. Allow the space to know that it is held, that it is attended to without agenda, without judgment. Every time we breathe in, we notice, sense. As we breathe out, we offer acceptance and release. Balance the focus between the in-breath, the activation, the sensing, and the out-breath. the release, the emptying, the offering. Invite whatever the heart is holding to come to the surface, to be known, to be heard. Offer it this safe space that is contained, that is held. And when the heart is feeling acknowledged and held, start to privilege the out-breath, flowing backward and downward into the space below. Exhaling and dropping down into the darkness below, behind. Whatever the heart is holding, allow it to be offered into that openness. The space of the ground that can hold anything. Offer into that space. Riding the out-breath, release and relax. Opening, down, falling, back. The in-breath happens naturally, and then we flow and follow the out-breath down, down. We can follow that sensation of release and opening backward beyond the end of the physical breath. We use the physical breath as a tether, an anchor to follow, and as the breath is exhausted and dissolves, we continue to fall and open. See if you can follow that flow and openness beyond the end of the breath. On and on. Awareness rides the breath from the heart space. And as the breath dissolves, awareness remains suspended in openness. And as you become more familiar and comfortable with resting empty, no breath, look right into the middle of that space. Look through the heart space into the vastness. Whatever arises in the conceptual mind or emotionally, fold it into the breath and release it into openness. Offer it into the vastness. And now, finally moving the hands back down to the belly. Resting the thumbs on the navel, framing the belly space. And again, breathing in from the ground through the sacrum into that belly space. Breathing out, releasing the belly space, allowing it to flow downward, backward. Breath by breath, revealing that space. Activating, emptying. Feeling and revealing. Emptying and revealing. Peeling away layers of fixation, solidity, and numbness. Revealing this tender space of the belly. Space of the womb. Follow the out-breath flowing downward from the belly, down into the ground. Again, balancing attention to the in-breath and out-breath. Now transitioning to focus more and more on the out-breath, riding it backward and downward. Flowing out of the belly space, emptying it, and offering whatever it holds into the vastness below. Again, whatever emotion, conceptual movement, feeling that as a lived experience, a lived, energetic holding or resonance, folding it into the breath, letting it ride down and back, offering it into openness. Releasing into vastness. Again, the breath is mixed with awareness, awareness riding the breath and sensation. And at the end of the breath, awareness steps off, free falls into vastness. suspending in openness. Look directly into that space. It is the space of the ground. It is the space of the belly. As my friend Andrew Holochek says, it is a womb with a view. Look into that space and relax. In this relaxing, many compulsive, reactive habits can assert themselves. In this groundlessness, this openness, we may feel ourselves seize up again, whether in the belly, in the heart, the throat, the head. We stay attuned to this natural arising and seizure. And in the arising we mix. We hold, we feel, and then release as you breathe out, offering it backward and downward. At this point, the practice becomes very simple. We rest, naturally settled, Rangbap, just dropped into the dark, into the open. And whatever pops up, we know it, we feel it fully, and we escort it into the open. Where it naturally unravels, naturally liberates, unties itself. Each breath, breath by breath. Guiding this process. So let's transition back to sitting up. If you have a mask, you can keep it on. Take some time to breathe, to recalibrate what is down, what is back, what is all around. You can look into the belly space, breathing with it, developing that inner eye. The belly as a window into that panoramic vastness. There is no above or below. And breath by breath, the inside and the outside pour into one another, like water being poured into water. And so there is only space. Or you can look into the heart space. Breathe provisionally into that place, inviting the breath from behind, in front, and the sides. And exhaling, softening the heart and allowing it to unfold like a flower, its petals unfolding in every direction. And ride the out-breath as you unfold and release. And then look directly into that heart space, like a portal, where the entire sphere is seen and known and felt. The entire sphere of all phenomena, all knowing. And again with the head. Breathe in and feel into the headspace. Breathing in through the eyes, the ears, the back of the head, the crown. Illuminating that space. And as you breathe out, softening all around. Opening that space like an amulet. Dropping the boundaries. Releasing tension. And here too, looking directly into the midst of that space, the center of space itself. And relaxing. Totally suspended. And just feeling the body as a whole now. And the ground around. And just rest naturally settled. Whatever arises, knowing and feeling, and then simply dropping. Let's try that now with a gesture that as you breathe in, raising up the hands, breathing in, raising the hands up above the head, breathing in, holding, mixing with all solidity and tension, and then exhaling and dropping with a sigh. Right at the end of that, there is a gap. Let loose into that openness. Again, breathing in, raising the hands up, and dropping. The whole body drop. Body, mind, drop. Okay, so if you're wearing a mask, closing your eyes and removing the mask and taking a little bit of time to adjust to the light through your eyelids and stay in that whole body openness. And again, whatever fixation develops from this light experience of influx of light, don't lose the essence of the ground, the space. Don't lose the darkness in the light. Again, breathing in, raising your hands up, and dropping. And opening the eyes very gently. Again, don't lose the essence in the display. Don't lose the darkness to the light. Rest without fixation. Without needing to be someone seeing something or things. And one last time, you can use your arms, or you don't have to, but just breathing in, gathering up any fixation, any sense of reference point, compulsive locationing. And exhale with a sigh, releasing. Okay. So, of course, that's all much more effective in the dark, or with a mask, even just as good in many ways, for short periods of time. But even without, hopefully, having a sense, connecting with some sense of benefit there, some sense of what the approach is, how knowing and feeling the body, and this aspect of ground, a bit of play on words, ground below that the body is resting on, and the ground of being, you might say, she, or she, the ground of our body-mind, and how being able to release and become familiar with the ground, which is becoming familiar and being okay with groundlessness, being without a ground, as the kind of fundamental quality of who we are and what reality is. Groundless. The groundless ground, as is talked about in the Vimalkirti Sutra. I'll have to dig that up at one point to get to the bottom of things. All of this is very much in tune with and resonant with the practice of darkness. And there's so much that could be said about why being in the dark is so helpful and so direct, and how it connects with this, what I associate, this aspect of the divine feminine, the dark mother, the Black Madonna, perhaps, all of these aspects of Kroti Kali, aspects of the divine feminine which are wrathful in some sense, which is not necessarily meaning violent particularly, or even scary necessarily, but very direct, no nonsense, just totally cutting straight to the essence. And to the extent to which we're not ready for that or willing for that, then becomes more scary and more forceful, energetic. So much can be said about that whole dimension, but what I'd like to focus on today is just this aspect of the body, and how embodiment and darkness are really one and the same, and that the wisdom of the body, the clarity and emptiness that we speak of in the context of Mahamudra, the primordial purity and self-perfection that we speak of in the Great Perfection, how these are the abiding condition of the body. And that when we go into the dark, it gives us a very direct place of access for knowing the nature of mind, the ground. Part of that is just sensory deprivation. We don't have visual forms, and ideally we don't have sound, auditory forms. And in the absence of what we are used to as this kind of constant processing of information with our eyes and our ears, which also these two senses in particular, vision more so, but also hearing, tend to be very prone to objectification. The eyes triangulate out and locate an object and apprehend it, grasp it. And so that very nature of apprehending, in the sense of perceiving, carries with it that valence of apprehending, which is grasping, and also the valence of apprehension, which is fear. So every time we're doing this thing with our eyes and perceiving, generally, there is grasping, and there is also othering, which is fear. Where there is another, there is fear. This line from the Upanishads. So, in the absence of that, visually, we're now in a space where we can explore an alternative to that. Same with hearing, kind of echolocating things. It's a little bit less strict with hearing. There's a little bit more spaciousness in hearing, a little bit more receptivity, and so you can kind of segue into a more open mode of hearing a little bit easier. That's why things like sound meditation are so effective. Sound healing, sound bathing, all of that. But even so, we have a very ingrained habit of I'm here hearing this out there, which, has a very applicable survival benefit. You want to be able to hear and see the things that are going to eat you or harm you or in whatever way. But again, in the dark, ideally that drops away. And when the objective side, objects that we are perceiving habitually with our eyes and ears, are no longer there, the subjective side, they're kind of like, one of my teachers describes it as, it's like our being and world is like a house of cards. It's very fragile, very superficial. It's all kind of a sham, and it's also very, very fragile. House of cards, by definition. And the last two cards in that whole situation are subject and object, and they lean on one another. And if you pull out the object, the subject will fall. So in the dark, when we lose all these objects, then the subject can fall, can drop. To whatever extent we're ready for that. Right? And because the normal investment in these senses of seeing and hearing is now no longer applicable, the body sense turns on very, very markedly. If anyone's done, the kind of Goenka style of Vipassana retreat, body scanning, up and down, just scanning up and down the body 9 hours a day, and really turning on the body and churning in a deep way the patterning that is held in the body. It's just like you do that over and over and over and over again, all the stuff starts coming out. Deep emotions, trauma, conceptual psychobabble, all this stuff. You're churning it by moving energy through the body. It's coming out. And ideally, then you're working with that in terms of that method. A very similar thing happens on this more introductory level of dark retreat practice, where the body turns on. You don't have anything else to feel or do or engage with, and now the body warms up, turns on. And you don't even have to do any kind of intentional scanning. It's just going to start speaking. It's going to start metabolizing. So there'll be heat, there'll be cold, there'll be pain, there'll be bliss, and there'll be all of the kind of content that is held within that patterning, somatically arising. Right? And so, point here being, especially on these introductory levels of dark practice, it's really about embodiment. And someone asked, how, I didn't even know you could prepare for dark retreat. It's like something you just sort of are plunged into, and that's true in a sense. But in another sense, one of the best preparations is knowing how to work with your body, and by implication, knowing your mind. And so on a deeper level, now when we're kind of presented with this situation where the objective side is pulled away, you kick the leg out of the chair, and now the subjective side starts to feel like it's falling into groundlessness. And that basically occasions a total freak out. And so this is why practicing in the dark is potentially very destabilizing. And so that may happen right away in some cases, but generally it takes a good amount of time before that really you get down to the deeper layers of that freak out, that response, that seizure, pulling back away from the descent into the ground, which is groundlessness, which is egolessness, losing one's self in a sense. But even on a superficial level, immediately, you have to just sit with you. There isn't anything else in there. It's just you. There's no content except what you bring to it. It's like Yoda's cave in Dagobah. Whatever you bring with you, there's nothing there, and it's all just you, and it's all the layers of selfhood, with different degrees of rigidity and accompanying freak out, being thrown up into space. And so one way then, in that situation, not only to be familiar with somatic practice, but on a kind of inner level, but on a what is called secret level, a deeper dimension of somatic practice, is when then we start to look into the body as having these kind of doorways to what is primordial, to what is groundless, to what is beginningless, to what is unborn. Many different ways of talking about that from different awareness traditions. But the premise here is that, and I gave you a little bit of sense of that in that introductory meditation, that when we can work with, say, the belly, the heart, the throat, the head, and start to become familiar with these as, on one hand, each of these being a locus of holding, a place where the body is holding itself together, a place where we, in the course of a life, are storing stress, storing rigidity, stuffing the things that we would rather not deal with in kind of the big trauma sense, but also the small trauma of being caught in duality at every moment, and in the act of apprehending, the tension of that, and the apprehension, the fear of that, all of that gets held in the body. Every moment of perception, there is a seizure. And every time there is a seizure, in every moment of perception, the body is what seizes. And where, over time, that seizure becomes ingrained as deeper and deeper levels of numbness, solidity, and chronic pain, and then eventually sickness, and so forth. So this is how the body knows and holds dualistic experience. And our only recourse is pulling the plug every night, where the body can finally just totally unfold, unravel, totally relax, and ideally recharge. Be free of that apprehension, where you are ideally in deep sleep, where there's no content, and you can truly rest. Again, there's lots to say about how that overlaps with darkness practice as well. But in any case, there are these places in the body which hold, are kind of these locus points of holding, so that when we work with them intentionally, now maybe we're someone who holds more in the belly or the heart or in the throat, and you can start to feel that, it's like, suddenly now I know this is where I hold, this is where I stuff stuff, this is where it's all being ingrained, inscribed, and held in the body. And may start off as being something numb, progress into something that is painful, progress into something that is more spacious and painful and blissful at the same time, as it starts to become more revealed, as we're present to its unfolding. And then eventually, you don't have to fully process anything, but eventually there's enough space that we can look directly in the middle of that pain, directly in the middle of that compulsive patterning, and we can see through it. And actually, to the extent to which that space is holding something, to that extent we can see through it in a very deep way, a very transformative way. And what are we seeing? We're seeing through to what? To the ground of being. And in that practice we did, seeing through into the space of the ground, the earth space. And so there are kind of two sides to these places of holding. There's the conditioned aspect of how it holds, and then there is the release of into the unconditioned aspect of the ground. And the more that we're able to do that, in whatever way we might need, each of these places in the body offers a unique window into that same essence. The window is unique, but the essence is the same. Empty, open, clarity. And so then we become familiar with the ground, our nature of mind, and so forth. And so again, this kind of angle of approaching dark retreat, which is somatic, and I called it the primordial spaces of the body, allows us to trace that full arc from the very personal, very conditioned, to the ultimate aspect of the ground of being, the essence that is shared by all sentient beings and all Buddhas, to our Buddha nature. And so the somatic practice of working with darkness is completely in tune with the entirety of wisdom traditions. In this case, particularly Mahamudra and Dzogchen. So how do we then use the dark to both discover the nature, the primordial purity of the ground, and to celebrate and to explore the self-perfection of its natural radiance and resonance, and to use that familiarity with both the ground and the self-perfected nature to enrich, our capacity to benefit others as compassion. So these are the bodies of the Buddha. Primordial purity of the ground is the Dharmakaya. The self-perfected nature of the radiance is the Sambhogakaya, and the compassionate energy and display is the Nirmanakaya. So the bodies of the Buddha, the kayas, are exactly the fruit of this practice of somatic approach to darkness. So that's all, a lot of concepts, but hopefully in the practice that we did, there were some touch points with experience. And also there's so much else, other things to say, both in terms of, like I was mentioning before, deep sleep, and the restorative aspect of that, and how it aligns with clear light yoga of the dark. So much to say about the dimension of dream, the space of the throat, you might say, and how that kind of liminality arises in the practice of the dark. Connected with that first aspect of deep sleep, preparation for death, for dying, and the bardos of death and after death. So much overlap with the practice of the dark, and many other dimensions. But this is just to give a kind of taste of that. And I'll be offering a course in the spring, at least 8 weeks, maybe more. When our community, we developed this, it was about 25 weeks of 90-minute sessions, or maybe more, like 2-hour sessions. So there's a lot of material, but I'm going to be bringing it down, streamlining it into 8 to 12 weeks probably. And if you're interested in that, just put your email in the chat, and I'll copy it, and then I'll get back in touch with you. Okay, that's enough for now. So let's open it up. If anyone has anything to share about your experiences, particularly with the practices we did, especially want to give priority to anyone who had anything challenging. If you didn't understand something, or if they had a challenging experience. And then also anything that I shared just now. And then also anything anyone has about, if you're here, maybe you're curious about doing Dark Retreat, and if you have anything that you want to ask about that. Yeah? Anybody have anything? You have a half hour.
About where to find information about your 12-week course.
It's not posted yet, so you just have to, like I said, put your email here, and then when it is posted, I'll get in touch with you. But it's going to be offered in the Field, which is a friend Peter McEwen's platform, and sometime in the spring. Yeah, Elizabeth?
This is something that's been on my mind for quite a while now, and the question is, what is the role of imagination in accessing, recognizing the great wholeness?
The role of imagination in recognizing great wholeness?
Recognizing and accessing.
And accessing great wholeness, yeah. So there's two ways of answering. One is kind of from the inside out, and the other is from the outside in. So from the outside in, kind of starting where we are right now, looking around you, your environment, looking at your body, and kind of imagining, looking inward at your sense of identity, who am I kind of stuff. All of this, it's totally made up. Like, we are imagining all of that, in a sense. We don't want to get too stuck in kind of reality status of objects, but to whatever extent you can imagine that your mind is participating to a great degree in everything that you are experiencing, and that to a greater or lesser degree what we're experiencing is actually mind stuff. Our mind is participating in it, and again, we'll get into this kind of spectrum of idealism and realism, but everyone can agree to some extent, at least if you're a little bit discerning, that the mind is participating in our experience, right? So what that means is that to whatever extent the quality of our mind is clear and free of compulsion, or you might say prejudice, or preconception, to whatever degree our mind is free of laying things on the outside, or free of laying trips onto our own self-identity, to the extent that we're free of that, then imagination is much more pure, much more alive, much more dynamic, much more humorous. There's a space for everything to kind of move, breathe, and be created. So the practice then, and the way of accessing, is developing our imagination. And the more we can develop that quality of imagination, the less we're laying on our reality and our sense of self these kind of solid, rigid, fixated stories, concepts, and so forth. And instead, we're perceiving much more directly, immediately, and with total imaginal flexibility. To use the metaphor of a dream, generally in a dream we are not lucid, and we're just running our scripts. Everything we see, most science will tell you this. I think Ken Paller's here. He's the master of all of this, actually. Most science will tell you this. Most of the time we spend dreaming is just kind of rehashing and regurgitating the things that we are either have experienced in the day or are fixated on from previous experience. It's just kind of a processing, garbage recycling situation. But then there is also this potential for imagination, and that people who are more creative and less kind of locked into their left brain, a lot of people, I have a lot of friends who are scientists, and a lot of them don't dream at all. And my suspicion is that a lot of that is because they're living in concept, disembodied concept, almost exclusively. But you might say, again, this is totally anecdotal, but a lot of kind of creative types, artists and children, who have very vivid imaginations, have a very vivid, active dream life, right? And so there's a little bit more participation in that, all the way up to the point of developing lucidity, where now you're completely free of the imposition of habit and self-sense, and the imagination is totally free to express itself creatively. So developing lucidity is the short answer from the outside in to your question. And that lucidity is a sense of humor, that lucidity is mindfulness, lucidity is imagination, creativity, all of that. And that directly translates into our access to the ground. As soon as you become lucid through that kind of creative imagination, it can be deity yoga, can be dream yoga, can be just being in that mode, an artistic creative mode, things become more spacious and less real, therefore more flexible, and therefore more clear. That is nature of mind. Right? From the inside out, it's a union of this from the very beginning. We recognize, and to relate it to darkness practice, there's a lot of what you'll find about dark retreat involves the activity of the imagination, and I said almost nothing about that in all the practices we did, and there's a reason for that. But a great deal of darkness practice is actually working with the luminous aspect of mind, the creative, effulgent aspect of mind that just doesn't stop radiating and resonating. And so when we know the nature of mind as both groundless and luminous, that is the practice. That is the access. We just cut straight to the ground. And that depends on introduction, it depends on familiarity, and that's why working from the inside out is not for everyone, and it's not something we can generally just step into. But all of that is very much present in the practice of darkness. And yeah, and that's enough for now. Is that helpful?
Very helpful. I have a follow-up question about my personal experience, but if someone else has a question, I'd like to give the opportunity.
There's time. Yeah, you can ask.
Okay. In my experience of the meditation today, and before the meditation, when I was preparing, I've been practicing integrating the awareness of, or being in the awareness all day, all the time. And so I had a difficult emotional state arise, and I turned my attention to the great wholeness, let's say, and it fizzled out, which is somewhat unusual. And when I was, and in my practice, I wonder about the imagination as, in the meditation, in the guided meditations, I feel that I'm entering in or to the truth, and I wonder, I'm checking on my own, the truth of that, the truth that I am indeed.
Like the authenticity.
The authenticity, as opposed to it being my imagination, simply my imagination.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a different way of talking about imagination, right? Yeah, so, I mean, Thanksgiving's coming up, and Christmas. That's the best way to authenticate that experience is to be with your family and or coworkers or whatever else. You know, a lot of it is in relationship that we find the places where we are still in need of integration, right? So that's one, you know, Sangha basically, and along with that, you know, being able to authenticate. There's no ultimate authentication. Usually, it's just a kind of being able to laugh together, but being able to talk with someone who knows you well, who is also familiar with that space, is really kind of the best way. And in your own experience, just seeing, you know, is this whatever, you know, what you're calling the great wholeness, this familiarity, translating into me having a more acute sense of how precious my life is, and the life of others, how fleeting time is, how you know, delicate the balance is, how pointless anything else is, you know, does that translate into a very direct knowing of those truths? Right? And if those truths are, I'm noticing the transience of things, and I'm noticing how much less I value the superficiality, and how much I'm inspired by and drawn to that which brings me home. You know, then that's a good sign, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, so the group chat is disabled. Oh, Katrina can take it. Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, I can enable the group chat, but I've just been forwarding emails to you directly.
Okay, great. Jumpa, yeah. Hey, good to see you again.
Nice to see you again, Lama Karma. So, I guess I've been getting on this dark retreat bandwagon, not really knowing it was a bandwagon, but
It's definitely a bandwagon.
Yeah, I'm in retreat, but I've made a dark room in my cabin, just because I like practicing in the dark a lot. Mostly mine is the path. I've appreciated your embodiment practices. I guess my question is, like, if I listen to like an Andrew Hollichuk, it sounds like he just does nothing in the dark. Maybe he does, it isn't revealing it, but it's kind of like just resting in the natural state. So if I've been experimenting with waiting 4 hours, and I did a 1 day, but like if I was gonna do a 3-day dark retreat, just kind of a real intro, like, would you have any structure? Like, I mean, obviously schedule's out the window, but like, is there like a structure of maybe embodiment into awareness? I guess any guidance you can give to that, and I guess you touched on a little bit, like how to relate and dance to it, because there's obviously always a view, and obviously the darkness in mind, and emptiness and clarity. But yeah, I guess the structure kind of would be helpful, if any at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot of different ways of doing it, and Andrew has done all of them, I think. And I like the way that he presents things in terms of what he calls Sutrayana dark retreat and Vajrayana dark retreat, where there's a kind of threshold between them of technique, basically, and also intensity and duration. So if you were to do something that's just 3 days long, and this is pretty much the best way to start anyway, and maybe the way that you would do something that is even much longer. I know, like Reggie Ray, when he talks about his dark retreat experience, I'm sure he's doing other things as well, but it's all Rang Bap, you know what I was saying before. Rang Bap meaning Rang is self and Bap is to fall. It means just letting everything drop. And this is the way that I practice primarily as well. And in that mode, there isn't a method. You know, if there's any method, it's being able to relate with the body as the kind of place of falling. So, you know, one way of doing it is you just rest in awareness, and whatever is arising, you continually bring it back to the essence. But since most of us don't have the capacity to rest in the essence reliably in that way, or practicing Trekcho in the Dzogchen tradition, to be able to remain in that, the body gives us something to fall back on that is very reliable and non-deceptive. So as much as you can, just remaining and witnessing and dropping, releasing again and again, unraveling. But eventually things may get sticky, and then coming back to the body and asking, well, how is that stickiness, how is this kind of edginess known by the body, and using, you know, some of the techniques we did just now, or just in general, the breath, mixing with that, and then allowing the body to drop, which then allows the mind again to open. And so that's, you know, it takes time to introduce those techniques. What we did today is pretty cursory, but I would say ideally being able to have a good deal of familiarity with different ways of working with the body, so that it can support or be, you know, kind of in the background of awareness practice, and you can fall back on that whenever you might need to. And so, to answer more specifically, you just ride it for as long as it happens, sleep whenever you need, and whenever things are arising, integrating with, to whatever extent you have knowledge of nature of mind, integrating with nature of mind, and to whatever extent you need, falling back on the body as a place of release, laying down, doing some gentle movements, doing some breath work, all of these different kinds of things, and then, but not overdoing it. You know, you do enough so that you can then get back to have a kind of clear view, and you're able to integrate what's arising. Right? Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's helpful. Maybe one quick follow-up if I don't see a hand, but one thing I've noticed is, even if I'm not trying to do quote unquote embodiment practice, the amount of unfurling that will start to happen was like 2 hours of just, it reminded me of plant medicine. It was quite amazing. Mm-hmm. And so whether I liked it or not, I was like, okay, I have to like deal with this. Mm-hmm. So there's like a way I could deal with that, like maybe Reggie Ray release style, but it sounds like you're talking about a deeper, just letting go into the groundless ground. Like,
both. No, there isn't fundamentally there isn't a difference between, you know, the way that Reggie Ray has taught and approached that with a basic Mahamudra awareness practice. Like they meet each other completely. But like you're saying, sometimes there aren't any tools, and the belief of trying to use a tool is actually counterproductive, and you just got to ride it, and you ride it with confidence that it is a ride. In other words, it's not interminable. And being able to have the support of a lineage, support of a teacher, being able to do Guru Yoga, for instance, to be able to have that in the background as well is also really important, so that you just surrender the whole process to the Divine Mother or whatever it might be, in that trust, and you just ride it out. And it's messy, potentially agonizing, but it does end, right? And so you just keep going.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Parma, I have a question about putting address in the chat box. I see the chat box is open now. Are you going to receive that information?
Yeah, whatever didn't come through to this point, to me, I guess Katerina will send me, and I only see Laura.
I opened the chat. You can chat to everyone, and I forwarded emails directly from anyone, from anyone who chatted directly to
Okay,
me.
yeah, I got it. Okay, great.
And when you say spring, do you mean like April?
I don't know. We haven't landed yet. But yeah, I mean, March at the earliest. Elizabeth, did you have another question?
Yes. Is dark retreat, I'm getting the impression, can be a very long time in retreat in the dark, or is it?
Can be. Yeah, I mean, I think the way to begin is really with like 1 to 3 days, and then to do like a week, and yeah.
And one would be in the dark that entire time.
And you can do a hybrid version where, you're in the dark most of the day, and then you come out at night with a kind of low level exposure, and then go back in, to kind of take the pressure off, or to be able to talk to people. So yeah, you can do a kind of hybrid version also.
Are there roots of this practice in the Tibetan Himalayan Buddhist tradition?
Yeah, no, that's primarily where I'm coming from, and is really the most fully developed. There's lots of traditions who have had darkness practice, but in terms of those that are extant, there are very few. I know, I'm aware of the Kogi in Colombia. It's not really a retreat; it's more of a way of life. And I think there's some in the Shaivite tradition, but mostly it's found in both the Kala Chakra tradition, and also in the Great Perfection. And there is also some found also in the as a supplementary part of the 6 yogas in the Kaji tradition. And also in Bon Dzogchen has a very strong dark retreat tradition. Good. Anybody else have anything? You satisfied? Anything practice-based?
Tradition.
What was that like?
Go.
Laying down. Yeah. Oh, hey, Kevin.
One thing. I didn't. Could you say more about what Andrew Holacek said? Like, you made a distinction between Sutrayana and Vajrayana dark retreat. I didn't quite get the difference.
Yeah, Sutrayana is much more kind of working with. You gotta mute yourself here. I'll do it. Yeah, there's some feedback coming from you. The way that he distinguishes it is that it's really just kind of a handy way of talking about intensity and depth of exposure. And the Sutrayana level is more introductory, where you are in there to really get to know yourself better, to be able to be free of all of the normal habitual hang-ups that we have, and to really sit with yourself in a way that's otherwise quite difficult. Anyone who's done any kind of silent retreat knows that the first time that you ever did that, it was deeply revealing, right? It's like, oh, my mind is full of crazy monkeys, and I have all these addictions, and I didn't even realize, and all that kind of stuff. So the darkness, in that way, is a profound mirror of who we are, and it allows us to also, at the same time, develop a deep sense of acceptance and compassion for ourselves, because within that mirror knowing of all of our craziness and neuroses and hang-ups and so forth, there's also a space that is held with great compassion. That the space is like a womb, a matrix, that is holding us and that process and that knowing, and that the insight, the knowing, is integrated with that aspect of compassion, which is the hallmark of Mahayana, compassion and emptiness. And so we're practicing that, we're imbibing that, or we're cultivating that, right? So then when we can kind of get beyond these more superficial layers of self, and we get down onto the level where we're flirting with death, basically. We're flirting with dissolution. We're going to the level of our grasping that is almost fundamental. It's like, what are the basic building blocks of my notions of self and reality that I'm holding on to very dearly? At that point, things become esoteric. And there's lots of reasons for that. Those of you who've been doing the course that I'm teaching on initiation, we've covered that territory very thoroughly. But when you start getting down to that level, you need a lot more support. You need a container of trust that goes beyond the norm. You need a link to something that's on the other side, whether that's teacher or lineage. You need methods that can help you navigate that space. And then when you can actually go through that and you can emerge into a place of confidence, then that space is what Elizabeth was asking about before. Now you're familiar with the ground, and so now whatever is arising, is your own mind, both the very disturbing aspects, the demonic aspects, and also the divine aspects. And so on that level, when you are fully intimate with nature of mind in that way, then you're integrating everything that comes up that you might otherwise mistake to be something external or other. And so then the intensity is much more acute, the stakes are much higher, and the practice is going much deeper. So there's a threshold there, and there's no easy way to say when you might cross that threshold. But as a kind of heuristic or generalization, we say, or Andrew says, that you have Sutrayana and Vajrayana, and it's kind of making that distinction a little bit more relatable. Yeah. That helpful, Kevin? Cool. Good. Anybody else? Thanks for that. Yeah. Elizabeth, you got 1 minute.
I just want to thank you and say I would love to have a Dharma Sunday or an opportunity to learn more about connecting to how to connect with the primordial through this practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, let's dedicate here. Through this merit, may I gain omniscience and defeat my faults, the enemy, and may I liberate all beings from this rough and stormy sea. Samsara's ocean with its waves of birth, old age, death, and disease. They know things in their true existence. Kuntu Zangpo and Manjushri. train myself in their example. I dedicate all virtue fully. May every being through this practice completely gather merit and wisdom, attaining the two sacred bodies that merit and wisdom emanate, through the blessing of the Buddhakayas, through the blessing of the changeless Dharmata, through the blessing of the steadfast Sangha. May this dedication be fulfilled. Okay. Thanks, everybody. So I'm going to go copy the chat now.
Thank you for being with us on the Karma. I'm going to put a link in the chat if anyone would like to offer dana so that NDF can continue to offer these programs. I don't know anywhere, well, there's not a lot of places you can learn about Dark Retreat, very specific. So thanks for being here and sharing your practice and teaching.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah. Okay. See you all around.